Hello everyone, this is part 1 of What If Naruto and Sakura Had a Kid. This story is made by Persephonae, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The Pink Plus was staring back at her from its plastic casing. Each test had yielded the same result. 4 Pink Plus. Later, she was at an agonizing standstill. These all have to be wrong. She picked up the lightweight plastic object for a second reading just to make sure there weren't any last-minute changes. The same Pink Plus sign. What was more ironic was that it was same shade of pink as her hair. She groaned, as her back slid against the cold bathroom wall. Her legs collapsed under her and she slowly lowered herself to the floor. She sat there, holding her head in her hands as her elbows rested against her knees. Not me. It can't be. How did this happen? She asked herself. She knew how it happened. She just didn't know how it happened to her. It wasn't like her to be so irresponsible, but she had known, in the back of her mind, that it was a possibility all along. She had indications, the late morning nausea, the missing menstrual cycles, and the bloating, as she deemed it, that never went away. Even Ino had noticed she had put on a few pounds, though it didn't do much to bulk up her slim frame. She hadn't even noticed the extra weight until the blonde commented about how big Sakura was getting. It wasn't unusual for Ino to notice fluctuations in others' weights. She was, after all, the most self-obsessed about being thin and attractive, as Ino always so delicately put it. The day prior, the two women enjoyed a lunch break away from the clinic. Ino had ordered a spinach salad and water to drink. Sakura, on the other hand, ordered every fried vegetable and meat that was on the menu. Ino jokingly mentioned that Sakura ate like she was preggers, to which Sakura became a ghostly shade of pale. The reaction wasn't missed by her blonde lunch companion and apprentice, who immediately began asking about who Sakura had spent the night with. Sakura had to offer Ino an unlimited supply of special weight loss tablets just to get her to shut up about it. Sakura knew she could trust Ino, despite her less than intelligent demeanor. Ino was a very promising apprentice, one of the few that Konoha could boast. Sakura felt the biting pain in her hand, and yelped as she realized she had decimated her 4th test with her superhuman strength, as Naruto called it. She hadn't realized she was grasping it so tightly in her fist that she had turned it to a plastic memory of its former shape. She let it crumble to the floor, joining the previous 3 tests she had also crumbled earlier. She leaned her head back against the cool tile of the bathroom wall as she tried to think back to when it had occurred. It had been 3 months since they had celebrated the success of the big mission. They had eradicated the forest surrounding the Kinzan gold mine of rogue ninjas. The traitors were using the mine as both a hideout and a means to supply their terroristic actions. The mines were long ago abandoned, though it was rumored that gold was still abundant in the caves. Apparently, the rumor had some truth to it. It hadn't been much of a fight, really. They had easily disbanded the group, bringing a few back to Konoha for interrogation. The mission had been a success for many reasons. Because they found where the terrorists had been harvesting gold, the country was able to renew their financial stores. In the process, Konoha had received a new ally, and the former members of Team 7 were to blame for that milestone. Naruto was the only one who hadn't managed to come out of it uninjured. He was foolish enough to chase them into the mines, breaking his leg in the process. They were delayed a few days while she healed his wounds, chastising him about how the mine could have collapsed. He was always so headstrong and impatient, that much hadn't changed since their younger years. But they weren't kids anymore. Right now, they were both parents. Why wasn't I more careful? She asked herself, gently hitting her head on the creamy yellow tile. She knew the answer, she didn't think of the consequences. No matter how much she tried to convince herself that night didn't exist, she found she could still remember every single detail. Most of Konoha's shinobi had celebrated at Jiraiya's house that night. He was away, meeting with the Kazekage in Sunagakure on Tsunde's behalf. The two countries had successfully worked in unison to stop the rising terroristic threats that were sprouting throughout the land. The alliance was mainly due to Naruto, who had become good friends with Gaara years before, back when Akatsuki was a bit threat. Being Naruto's godfather, Jiraiya allowed him full use of the large house, and Naruto made use of it. Most of their old colleagues had come to join in on the celebration. Ino had spent the night flirting with Shikamaru, despite his constant disinterest. Lee, Tenten, and Shino were all on missions with their teams and missed out on the festivities. The older Jonin also came to celebrate, as it was an accomplishment for them to have their former students become such astute shinobi. She should have seen it coming, in all honesty. She had decided that she would enjoy the alcoholic beverages, and she did just that. Everyone had started to say the goodbyes by the time midnight came around. Kiba and Hinata had been the last two to leave, and Sakura had been pretty sure that Kiba was finally going to confess his love to Hinata. Both her and Naruto had joked about it, since everyone but Hinata seemed to know how Kiba felt. It wasn't that he kept it a secret, it was that he joked so much that Sakura could see how it would be difficult to really know whether or not he was serious. Hinata had come a long way since her introverted days. She was an excellent Jonin and a phenomenal teacher to her team. She was currently the appointed head of the Hyuga household, which she was planning to undertake jointly with her cousin, Neji. The two had become quite close since their exams years. Hinata was easily one of the most beautiful women in the village, and had her share of suitors, though she seemed to have no interest in any of them. Except one, and he was finally going to get around to telling her that. Sakura and Naruto had pretended to be Hinata and Kiba as he confessed his love to Hinata. Sakura could still remember the look in Naruto's eyes as he played his role as Kiba, confessing his son's love and devotion. It had felt as if he had almost meant it. Before she could commend him on his acting skills, he kissed her. She didn't resist his advances, much to her surprise. She never thought she would be kissing Naruto, the fearless and enthusiastic teammate whom she had known since childhood. But, it was Naruto she kissed, returning his fervor. She blamed the alcohol, though deep down she knew that it wasn't entirely responsible for her actions in returning his endeavors. She recalled the soft, tentative kisses as they became more passionate and needing. They kissed until her lips tingled and burned. Their hands wandered over each other's clothing, finding their way under and through. It was clumsy, but it was never awkward. She reveled at how comfortable it felt with him. He was so careful with her, as if he was afraid she was a fragile glass doll. She giggled at his seriousness, but she couldn't deny that he, at times, felt so loving. It hadn't hurt as much as she thought it would, and it was far less awkward than she imagined. In fact, she enjoyed the feelings and sensations she encountered that night with him. It exceeded everything she had heard or expected. They had both been so inexperienced, but the desire made up for their lack of knowledge. She remembered how much his hands shook as he undressed her and the grave expression on his face as he asked her if she was sure this was what she wanted. They were both surprised at her enthusiasm as she pulled him down on her in a sudden rush of need and emotion. Sakura blamed the alcohol, but part of her doubted that it was the only reason for her actions. They spent hours in that bed, getting to know each other's body and exploring. They had finally exhausted themselves, falling asleep in the satin sheets of the guest bedroom. That morning, Sakura had awoken with a splitting headache and a sour taste in her mouth from the drinks the night before. She realized she wasn't clothed, and it took her a few minutes to realize where she was. It hadn't been a dream. She remembered feeling slightly disappointed at herself for being so wanton and careless with herself, especially with her own teammate and friend. She had quietly slipped out of the sheets, scavenging for her clothes from the night before. She hastily dressed, only stopping to watch Naruto's deep breaths. His face was so innocent as he dreamed dreams that she would never know. She silently slipped out of the house, attempting to make it home unseen. She drank a few glasses of water when she made it to her own apartment before collapsing into her own soft bed. She slept until the early evening, only awakening to the pounding on the door. She had been startled to find Naruto at her doorstep, nervously scratching his head and mumbling about being so sorry for what happened. She had stopped him mid-sentence, telling him that they were both drunk and no apology was necessary. She remembered the look in his eyes as she relieved him of his guilt. It wasn't entirely relief, there was something else. She had felt her stomach sink at how he responded, nodding his head and telling her to feel better before he retreated home. She was surprised at his indifference, as if she expected something more from him. She wasn't sure what it was that she expected, but she couldn't stop thinking about that night after he left her at the front door. There had been more awkward moments between them after that day. They were sent on a few missions together, though they were never alone. There was always an unspoken weight that hung between them. Sometimes, she thought Kakashi could feel it, too. She had removed herself from the last mission he had been on, stating she wanted to spend more time at the clinic as well as practice her defensive jutsu. He had been disappointed when Tsunade briefed him on her last-minute withdrawal before he left, but he said nothing. He just looked at her with questioning blue eyes that were filled with a sort of sadness that hurt her. She wanted to talk to him, she just didn't know how. They had always been able to talk, they had been close since they were kids. But, they weren't kids anymore. Sakura sighed, running her index finger through the crumbled mess of plastic pregnancy tests on the floor. No, she couldn't deny it. She was most likely about 12 weeks along. And she hadn't known it. How could one of the most experienced medic nin not know she was carrying a living being in her own body? She could create an antidote to almost any poison she encountered. She was the best trauma medic that Konoha had ever seen, even surpassing Tsunade's skill. She could precisely pinpoint a bleed from over 100 yards away, even healing it from that distance. Yet, she didn't know she was carrying a child, a living, breathing, baby. What am I going to tell my parents? She thought, groaning at the concept. What was she going to tell everyone? She knew she had to speak to Tsunade, as the Hokage would know how to handle the situation. Sakura knew that she could easily drink a tea that would promote early uterine contractions, dispelling the dependent fetus, but she couldn't bring herself to do something like that. It was, after all, her actions that brought this consequence about. Most would be elated at the possibility of being pregnant, but she was in shock. She helped herself to her feet, standing at the sink. She turned on the cold water, letting it run for a few seconds before filling her cupped hands with the clear liquid. She leaned down, soaking her face with its coolness. She wiped her face with her soft cotton towel, looking at her reflection in the mirror. A pair of green eyes returned her gaze. She had slight dark rings under them, and pink hair hung limply as it fell over her shoulders. She decided to shower before she went to see Tsunade. She quickly slipped into the shower, letting the warm water beat against her back. She looked down at the slight bulge that protruded from her once flat abdomen. It wasn't entirely noticeable, so she could get away with wearing her normal clothes for the time being. Perhaps she would carry her medic pack up a little higher on her waist to cover some of it. It was then that the realization hit her: she was pregnant. Her hot tears mingled with the shower water, her body shaking from the sobs. She leaned against the shower, crying harder, pitying herself. She cried until she had no more tears. She resolved to see Tsunade before she made any decisions regarding the new development. She could leave Konoha on a mission for 6 months, easily, and put the baby up for adoption. Naruto would never have to know. She knew she couldn't do that to him. He deserved to know that she was carrying his child, too. The new revelation would have to wait until he returned from his current mission. They were traveling to Kumogakure, which wasn't a short journey in itself. She had no idea he would return. He had left with Shikamaru, Kakashi, and Shino the day before. It had been a secretive mission, and she hadn't pressed the issue with the Hokage. She suspected it involved some spying and information retrieval about the Land of Lightning's military movements. Naruto had stopped to say goodbye to her, but she pretended to not be home. He left her a note that told her where he was heading and that he hoped she would remain safe while he was away. She wondered how he would feel when he returned. Would he believe that it was his child? Would he hate her? Or would he be ecstatic? Would he turn and walk away from her again? She felt anxious at the unanswered questions that resounded in her head as she dried the water from her body. She looked at her slightly fuller figure in the mirror. How had she not seen this earlier? Well, I'm going to have to buy some ginger on the way home to calm my stomach in the mornings. She made a mental note to stop at the grocer's on the way back from Tsunade's. She dried her hair and put a floating blue dress to hide her new curves. No one will suspect anything, she told herself, judging her new size in the mirror. She knew that she was being too critical, Only Ino could notice a 5-pound weight gain. She touched her stomach, wondering if she would be able to feel it kick soon. She knew that she was, at the most, 12 weeks. Babies don't kick until at least 16 weeks. Good. I can pretend this isn't real for another month, she convinced herself. She grabbed her handbag from the chair as she headed for the door. She twisted the knob, and was greeted by a light breeze that was warmed by the sun. She breathed in the spring air, looking around the neighborhood. It would be a decent place to raise a child, she thought. She took another deep breath, calming her racing heart as she stepped out into the sunlight into the newfound pages that were going to be both her life and the life of the child living inside of her. Sakura didn't remember much of the walk from her place to Tsunde's office. But, here she was before the oversized bronze-plated doors of the Hokage's workplace. She pushed the doors open with chakra-fueled ease as she quietly entered the building. Her silver sandals lightly tapped the white marble floors as she entered the doorway to the Hokage's quarters. She heard Shizune silently humming to herself from behind a thick-rimmed pair of reading glasses. They are a cute look on her, Sakura thought. Shizune looked up, surprised to find Sakura standing before her. Oh, Sakura, what brings you here today? It's your day off, I'd expect you to be as far away from hospital duties as possible. She smiled at her health clinic companion. Shizune's voice startled Sakura's thoughts, bringing her back to the present. Huh? She asked. She was lost in thought, and slightly disoriented. Oh, Shizune. Hi. Sorry, I was just thinking about something, she trailed off, embarrassed at her childish reaction. She smoothed her dress, fretting that Shizune could see her stomach protruding through it. Something. Or someone. I know that look, I've seen it a million times on Ino's face, Shizune teased. Please. Sakura rolled her eyes, do not compare me to Ino. The two women laughed at Ino's expense. They both knew that Ino had a new flavor of the week, as she so endearingly termed it. She was constantly chasing a new boy. Though, to Sakura's surprise, she had been focused on Shikamaru for more than a week. In fact, it had almost been a month. That's a record, Sakura thought, I'll have to record this for memory's sake. Sakura's eyes fell on the vase of wildflowers on Shizune's desk. A grin spread across her ivory face. Those are beautiful, Shizune. Are they from an admirer? She suppressed a laugh as the dark-haired woman's face turned crimson. Sakura was well aware that Iruka had been sending various gifts to Shizune at the office. He was trying to woo the young receptionist to no avail. Though, as of lately, Sakura wasn't so sure that flattery hadn't won the raven-haired woman over. The color of Shizune's face at the mention of her admirer was enough to confirm her suspicions. I suppose it's none of my business. But, she added with a nod toward the flowers, you are very lucky to have someone want your attention so much. I bet he's very charming. Shizune seemed pleased at the praise, lightly touching the petals of the orange dahlia that was bending itself in her direction. She seemed lost in thought, gazing dreamily at the token of Iruka's love. Suspicion definitely confirmed, Sakura triumphantly thought. They would be a good match, she knew. Shizune had long been devoted to Tsunade, and Iruka had been an amazing mentor to Naruto. She could think of no better match in Konoha than those two. She interrupted Shizune's thoughts, is Tsunade available, by any chance? Shizune blinked a few times, realizing that Sakura was speaking to her. Yes, we've just finished a rather long meeting, she rolled her eyes, indicating that it was a council Hokage session. Those tended to be long-winded and drawn out. She's reading the transcript from the meeting that I typed up, I think. Go on in, she'll be happy to see you. She waved toward the frosted glass doors. Thanks, Shizune. Oh, and tell your mystery man that I commend him on his choice of flowers. She gave one last glance toward the vase before pulling open the door to Tsunade's expansive suite. She entered, looking for the familiar blonde hair and enormous BS. She found no one. Hello, Tsunade, she called out. Sakura, I'm in here. She heard a reply from the adjacent room. Sakura swiftly walked into the side office, finding Tsunade sitting at her desk. Her bare feet were resting on the desk, and her robe was strewn across the tiny sofa on the other side of the room. Her eyes were closed and papers were sprayed all over the top of her mahogany desk. Rough meeting. Sakura grinned. You have no idea, Tsunade groaned, rubbing her temples. What brings you in? It's your day off, isn't it? Yes, Sakura affirmed. How does everyone know my schedule? I have something I need to talk to you about. She forced the words from her mouth. She felt the familiar tremor come back to her hands. Tsunade could sense the seriousness of Sakura's request. She removed her feet from the desk, rising from her seat. She walked toward Sakura, gesturing to the oversized sofa. Of course. Please sit down. Make yourself comfortable. Is everything all right? Sakura slumped on the couch, putting her face in her hands. She felt an overwhelming sense of frustration and immediately burst into tears. I'm pregnant. More tears followed her outburst. Tsunade listened to the news quietly. She worriedly observed her young pupil. She had known Sakura since she was barely more than 11. She was now a beautiful young professional physician in Konoha, one of its greatest assets. She was more than capable of taking care of a child. Tsunade was confident of that much. When Sakura had calmed down, she realized that Tsunade had not said anything since her outburst. She peered at Tsunade from between her fingers. Her former teacher was sitting with her hand slightly covering her mouth. Sakura raised her head, meeting Tsunade's eyes. Well, aren't you going to yell at me or something? Sakura croaked, her tea raw from crying. Tsunade held her gaze for another half of a minute before breaking out into a fit of laughter. Sakura was taken aback by her boss fit of hysteria. I don't understand. What's so funny? She squealed, frustrated at the Hokage's reaction. She said between fits, I was wondering when you would realize it. More laughter. What? Sakura roared, you knew. Of course I knew. I have been a medic for over 40 years, don't you think I could see the signs? She retorted. Sakura was mortified, how could she know before Sakura, who was the one carrying the child? She stuttered in disbelief. You were constantly feeling nauseous at every morning report. I've known you since you were a child, don't you think I would notice if you put on 5 to 10 extra pounds? She pointed out. Sakura was completely baffled at the revelation. I don't know what to say. I just found out and I'm still in shock. Oh, Tsunade, I don't know what to do. Her green eyes showed her concern as a new mother, as well as her vulnerability. She hadn't intended to become a parent so soon. Tsunade stood up and took a seat next to Sakura, pulling her into a motherly hug. Well, first of all, we need to start you on prenatal vitamins. You'll need a sonogram since you're probably about 10 to 12 weeks along. You'll need some parenting books. I didn't say I was going to have the baby. Sakura blurted. She quickly covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes widened at her sudden outburst. Tsunade was silent. Tsunade, I'm sorry. The Hokage shook her head. No, I'm sorry for assuming. I know you're scared, and this was unplanned. I will respect whatever decision you come to. I do, however, want to say that I think you'll be an excellent mother. You are more than ready, Sakura. Sakura thought about her mentor's words before replying. I just don't know what to do. I'm still in shock about it all. I never planned this. I never expected I'd be a mother. I'm not even married. What are my parents going to say? She groaned at the thought. She knew her parents would be angry. They were traditional in their beliefs. It was customary for a woman and man to be married before they had children. Not everyone gets married, Sakura. Look at Kurenai, she's been a single mother since Asuma, she trailed off. Since Asuma was ked, she didn't need to finish the statement, it was unnecessary. Sakura knew what Tsunade meant. Kurenai had raised their child since his death years before. The young girl, Hanako, or Hana, as the village so affectionately deemed her, was about 6 years old. Tsunade interrupted her thoughts, and, perhaps this is a little premature, but you could always talk to Kurenai about your worries. She is, after all, going to have a baby around the same time as you. What? You don't mean, you can't mean, she was at a loss for words, Kurenai was pregnant. Again. Tsunade nodded, I mean, she is going to have her second child, Sakura. She confirmed what Sakura had thought she was insinuating. The Hokage continued, close your mouth, you're gaping. That's not becoming of a professional, young lady. She smiled at the younger woman. Sakura was taken aback by Tsunade's revelation. Kurenai was going to have a baby. Kakashi had been helping with her care for Hana since the child's birth, which Sakura suspected he felt was his duty as Asuma's close friend. She couldn't deny she hadn't thought of the possibility of an emotional attachment between Kakashi and Kurenai. The two were often seen together, though neither admitted to dating the other despite everyone's constant joking. Sakura had known Kakashi since her early school days and she had never seen him so revived. In her heart, she knew there was an unspoken bond between the two adults. She didn't blame them for falling in love, as they were both wonderfully caring, especially toward Hana. They both deserved happiness after everything that had happened. So, you do have someone to share your feelings with. Kurenai would be a good source of advice and counsel. I will have to think about that, Sakura promised. She realized her hand was resting on her abdomen. Tsunade noticed it also. Are you having any cramping? Any loss of weight or unusual bleeding? She asked, worry etched on her face. Sakura was touched at her concern. No, none at all. She closed her eyes and leaned back against the soft couch. I just don't know what to do. I trust that you'll make the best decision for you, Sakura. Something in her voice made Sakura wince. Out with it, Tsunade. She mumbled, bracing herself for what was to come. The father, is it? She hesitated, waiting for Sakura's reaction. She had long suspected that the two former teammates shared a bond that was beyond friendship, though Sakura never seemed to realize the depth of her attachment to the son of the fourth. It is, she nodded, her eyes still closed. I'm not sure how he's going to take it. I think he'll take it quite well, actually. He seems like a man who would love a family. He's much like both of his parents, the Hokage remarked thoughtfully. Really, he's never really spoken of them. I am aware that the fourth, Minato, was his father. But what about his mother? Sakura's interest was piqued. Kushina, Tsunade recalled, was an exceptionally beautiful and talented kunoichi. She had caught Minato's heart, and he was smitten since then. Who would have thought that Konoha's yellow flash, not to mention Hokage, would have been so easily brought to his knees? She smiled at the memory. You never saw one without the other. He was a student of Jiraiya, you know. That old fart was so excited when Minato asked him to be the child's godfather. So that's why he was so interested in teaching Naruto, Sakura murmured. She had often wondered why he was so adamant about being Naruto's mentor. Now, it made much more sense. I think he has exceeded both of his parents in strength and determination. They would be very proud of him if they were still living, she trailed off, her voice filled with sadness. They sound like amazing parents. He was very lucky, I'm sure they loved him very much, Sakura whispered. They did. Enough for Kushina to risk her life to carry him to term and for Minato to give his life for his own son, she concluded. Her eyes met with Sakura's beautiful green ones. Just make sure you are honest with him. He deserves that much. Sakura nodded. She knew Tsunade was right. If you want, I can send someone to bring him back, the blonde offered. No, you will do no such thing. Like I said, I have a lot to think about. I really need to think about what is best for both me and this child. Her hand found its way back to her slightly swollen abdomen. So, was it worth it? The older woman teased. Sakura glared at the Hokage's mischievous grin. She could feel her ears turning red. That's none of your business. Actually, as my employee and former student, it is very much my business. I like to think of you as the daughter I never had, Tsunade pointed out. Sakura's glare turned dark. None of your business. She enunciated every word. You came to me, remember. I think I have a right to ask any questions that I want. As your physician and obstetrician, that is, she retorted. She placed a hand over the one Sakura had on her stomach. Her voice was softer, more serious. I think you already know what you want to do. I just think you need a little guidance. The tears burned Sakura's eyes as they fell down her cheeks. The two women sat in silence as the sun's warmth radiated through the massive glass wall, casting rainbow prisms of light on the ceiling. Sakura watched them spark with hope. The silent content was interrupted by Shizune's voice echoing through the suite. Tsunade, a carrier pigeon has brought word back from Jiraiya. About Sunagakure. That idiot. I told him to use the scroll. How difficult is it to follow directions? The fifth hissed. It was Sakura's turn to smirk. Speaking of idiots, how is the boyfriend? This time, it was Tsunade who gave the sly glare. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.